one of the benefits of a controlled environment from a PoE lighting or PoE in general and IoT devices, it allows us to enhance the occupancy comfort and productivity. We all been to the office, it's either too hot, too cold, or a light bulb is out, but you have no insight. You as the user have to call facility and tell them about whether it's too hot, too cold, or even a light bulb is out, because they have no data that's pushed onto them that let them know proactively how to address the building. With Power over Ethernet technology, you have the infrastructure, that highway of data that goes upstream autonomously or asynchronously back to the facility managers, back to the IT. So proactively, they know when they need to service a specific place. They know what's the data that's being occupied in those particular offices, conference rooms, etc. And they can make intelligent decisions to conserve energy as well as keep the occupants productive and comfortable. As we talked about, many IoT devices are coming online, and with the IoT devices, we think about integration. It's important to include technologies that are integratable. If you look at a specific building, you can have the best of each technologies, but if they don't integrate, there's a piece that's missing. It might be the best efficient HVAC system, but it requires some data from maybe shades, daylight harvesting, and controllability to maybe the lighting and HVAC in order for it to make sense. You want to be able to do all of that. And one of the ways to do it is really changing the infrastructure to Power over Ethernet. It's an infrastructure change that allows all these devices to talk to each other securely and autonomously and make decisions for a better outcome to the building and the occupant.
When you say securely and autonomously, I think that's a key in many people's reticence for any kind of data usage, right?
Security, having the infrastructure of wired versus wireless alone gives us some sort of comfort. We know the interference of channels of Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Bluetooth. That all creates that hesitancy of deploying a technology that maybe one is not really scalable. It could be done in a smaller environment, but when you think about a building with multiple floors, you want a scalable platform. And I think we noticed and we understand that Power over Ethernet technology is very scalable. We've seen it in cameras, we've seen it in access controls, we've seen it in voice over IP years and years ago. It's not new, it's not something that was implemented. And from a security standpoint, all the edge devices, and I would encourage anyone that's picking up an infrastructure technology or PoE technology, look for companies that look after their security. You want someone that uses the current standards, best practices, and a company that uses much more than just your regular passwords or your regular tokens. There are some implementations that require manufacturer user descriptions, and that's one of the ways of securing devices. So if they're interchangeable, if they get interchanged by another device, the port gets shut down and there's an alert back to the facilities and an IT, so you can alert them that there's an intruder in the building or intruder in the network. These are small, simple implementations that need to be standard, that need to be forced into IoT devices so we can keep the security in mind and have that peace of mind that, you know, we have the data, but it's also secure. You have advanced user interface, which means that from a facility manager, I can get granular control to each level or each fixture or each zone independently and understand how that zone is behaving. I could compare zones against each other, compare flows against each other. I can even compare buildings against each other and understand the energy consumption, behaviors, savings, abnormalities across all these buildings or across all these zones together to make intelligent decisions. Now, even the system gives you some of those suggestions back, and using some AIs and MLs inside the systems, you can now take that information and bring it to the user ready to go, explaining what's the energy consumption, what type of energy usage we want to look forward in the future, and how do we achieve it. All of that allows you to track your sustainability goals, it tracks your energy savings, it allows you to create that integration from the software. So you can make adjustments to your buildings right from remotely or on-prem, depending on how the system has been deployed from a software implementation. So each user gets their setup. Basic setup is, as soon as I enter the building, I am in the 19th floor and I am office 104. The system would logically give you a path of egress or a path of entry, which triggers, as soon as you enter it, it'll trigger the light, it illuminates the path into your office, starts the HVAC system, set up your preferred lighting and shades just by you entering the building or scanning as an entry point. That's a pre-setup that you have to that you have to give the user. Now, don't forget, if the user decide to go to the 8th floor instead, you still have motion sensors that would trigger and the light would turn on and they'll have all that settings. This is just to optimize that repetitively. You're probably, every time we go to the office, you go to the same exact place at the same exact time every time. So you want to maximize energy instead of, as soon as I scan in, I don't want 19 floors, all the 19th floor hallway to turn on the lighting if I'm only going to stop at the 19th floor. So you want the 19th floor hallway and specifically my office to turn on, not every other office.
And so any system provider would be working with many different manufacturers, because obviously all these levels of technology, whether it's sensors, blinds, MEP, lighting, operations, elevators, things like that, all these systems that can speak together aren't from one manufacturer. There's no typology limitation. There's no sort of one of pigeonhole into the one technology.
Yes, it's multiple vendors, multiple technologies. The common is it's Power over Ethernet. It's the same concept of you have a PoE switch, you have an endpoint, and from the PoE switch to the endpoint, it's the exact same cable that's going to be used for your data, your computer, your access point, your camera, and your lighting, and your shades, etc.
And it just knows what's on each end, basically. It just has a different thing. Okay, fantastic.
I think Power over Ethernet is proved that it's here to stay, because one, we're reached 90 watts, and two, we have a standard and we have large deployments that we know that the system works. The next logical thing that we've seen working is fault managed power. And that's the ability to even bring in more than just 90 watts, close to 300 watts over just a twisted pair. And fault managed power is the ability to pulse DC power into the switch rather than feed it with AC. So the ability to take large amount of power, take it all into an 18-2 cable and feed it on the other end without being able to either shock someone or generate a lot more power than the other side needed. And that's really class 4 power. It's a class that was initiated, or it's already a certificate in the UL 2023 code. We're already reached that. We know that with a PoE switch, you can now control and power data or devices, but that PoE switch still needs AC to come into it. That outlet still needs AC to come into it. But majority of our devices require DC. Why not drive DC into the edge point also? So you're coming in with high voltage or high power DC into the PoE switch, into the outlets, and harvest that data. Although when we look at renewables, your solar is generated in DC, your hydro is generated in DC. So in the PoE lighting specifically, it's very low data driven, high power. Because you're not streaming 4K video, and you're not sending high packets or high speed packets through the system. It's more event driven. When a sensor triggers, or when a wall switch triggers, or maybe when there's a query for an event. So the data packets are very small and it could be in bytes and even if in kilobytes, compared to obviously you're streaming through video cameras and access points, etc. So from a broadband or data standpoint, lighting and shades does not require a lot of system requirement as far as the network itself. Device to control your environment. I don't want to get up and touch the light switch. I don't want to turn on the HVAC by calling someone from an HR environment or facility. I want to be able to do all of it within my space, and I don't want to control anybody else's space, but I want to control my own space from my own device. And I think that's been the driver for a lot of the innovation of how do you bridge that, or how do you provide the customer and the user all of that information, still keeping data security and privacy in mind, right? You want to be able to do all of that without, obviously jeopardizing some sort of cybersecurity attacks, etc.
The hurdle that you find yourself needing to cross that either stops or moves the project forward?
I think it's education. Many professionals in this particular, in the construction industry, are used to what they've done in the past, and usually they're adverse to making a change, because if it's a risk analysis for them, and what they have done in for the past 30, 40, 20 years, they don't want to change it because it always worked in that fashion. So for us, is creating that PUE consortium was the ideal scenario for us, is taking competitors and taking users and putting them together and creating that starting point, so we can actually all move into the right direction, and educating the industry, the owners, the architects, the MEPs, the lighting designers, the EC, the GCs, about what PUE benefits are. It's not a one company, it's not a one standard, it's multi-company, multi-standards, technology been proven for years. This is not something that was just created a couple months ago, and it's proprietary to a specific vendor. It's something that's been here, it's been deployed. It's a technology that benefits not only from a sustainable aspect, productivity, energy savings. It has many benefits that allows us to take the building to the next step and apply a technology that we can all benefit from, and have that information available to us.
Fantastic. I can't think of a better way to end on a high note. I think that that's education, which is, I think, what we're trying to do here, and what we try to do each episode that we have is educate on a different topic.